when a man by the name of Krigo came stepping up to me. Says, how do you do, young fellow, and how would you like to go and spend one summer pleasantly on the range of the buffalo? It's me being out of employment, boys. To Mr. Krigo I did say, this going out on the buffalo range depends upon the pay. But if you will pay good wages, pay transportation too. I think, sir, I will go with you to the range of the buffalo. Yes, I will pay good wages, boys. This old Krigo, he did say, provided that you'll go with me and stay the summer through. But if you should go homesick, come back to Jacksboro. I will not pay your transportation from the range of the buffalo. It's now our outfit is complete, 7 able-bodied men. With Navy 6 and needle guns, our troubles did begin. Pease River is salty as hellfire, the water I could never go. So God's first, the weather I could never go, and engines watch to pick us off on the range of the buffalo. Our food, it was buffalo hump on ironwood bread. And all we had to sleep on was a buffalo robe for a bed. I'd say their fleas and graybacks worked on us, so boys, they are not slow. I'd say there's no worse hell on earth than the range of the buffalo. The season being ended, this old Krigo, he did say, well, we had been extravagant. We're in debt to him that day. Oh, we coaxed him and we begged him, but still it was no go. We left old Krigo's bones to bleach on the range of the buffalo. And now we've crossed Pease River, boys, and homeward we are bound. No more in that hell-fired country will ever we be found. Go back to our wives and sweethearts, tell others not to go. For God's forsaken the buffalo range and the damned old buffalo. Thank you very, very much. This show is dedicated to the memory of my son, John Nova Lomax, who passed away May 22nd. He was a journalist. He wrote for a number of magazines, beginning with the Houston Press, Houstonia, Texas Monthly, and lastly with Texas Highways. And in that magazine, he printed a long article about Galveston a couple of years ago. Some of you may have seen. I want to thank Joel for having me out here. I'm kind of new at this, as you probably have noticed. I decided to do this because no one was doing it. I'm the inheritor of a legacy of American music that no one else can match. My grandfather, John Avery Lomax, started a tradition which now has reached its 5th generation. All of these people, my grandfather, my aunt, my uncle, my father, my brother, cousins, my son John Nova, and now my son John Henry, who is in the audience tonight. He is my roadie and my merch person for this one night. Thank you. So the show's called the Lomax on Lomax Show because that's what it is. It's me talking and singing songs associated with the Lomaxes. and that includes all of the ones that I've mentioned: Uncle Alan, Aunt Bess Hawes, my father, John Avery Lomax, John Nova, and several cousins. So we're going to launch into, we start with my grandfather would lie in bed at night. The family moved to Texas in 1869. He was 2 years old. And sometime around 1877 or 1876, as he lay in bed at night, he would hear cowboys, and they'd be singing, to keep the cattle calm at night. So after a while, I think he was maybe 8 or 9 years old, sometime around the Chisholm Trail ran right through the farm that they had bought outside of Meridian, Texas, on the banks of the Bosque River. So he started writing down the words to these songs in something like 1876 or 75. I'm not precisely sure. Somehow he figured out how to remember the melodies. He had no training, no teachers, no books, but he remembered the melodies. And as he grew older, he started recording. When they were able to record, he got a recording machine that first was a wax cylinder, but that was not a sustainable practice. So eventually he got one of those rigs that you see that's the RCA Victor trademark with the white dog staring intently at the microphone, and it says, "His Master's Voice." Well, grandfather would take the cone-shaped speaker, he'd tie it to the saddle horn, he'd take the square base, lash that to the back of his horse, and off he would go in search of cowboy songs. 35 years after he began writing these words down, his first book was published, Cowboy Songs and Other Frontier Ballads. Had he not done that, the next 3 or 4 songs that I'm going to sing might have been lost forever, because this was the first time they were published in a book. As I walked out one morning for pleasure, I spied a cowpuncher a-riding along. His hat was throwed back and his spurs was a-jingling as he approached me a-singing this song. Whoopie-tie-I-O, get along, you little dogies. It's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-tie-I-O, get along, you little dogies, for you know Wyoming will be your new home. Early in the spring we round up the dogies, mark them and brand them and bob off their tails. Load up the horses, round up the chuck wagon, and throw them dogies out on the trail. And it's whooping and yelling and driving them dogies. Oh, how I wish you would go on. It's whooping and yelling and punching them dogies, for you know Wyoming will be your new home. Your mother, she is raised way down in Texas, where the Jimson weed and the sandburrs grow. Now we'll fill you up on prickly pear and cola, so you'll be ready for the trail to Idaho. Or you'll be soup for Uncle Sam's Injuns. It's beef, beef, beef. I hear them cry, get along, get along, get along, you little dogies, for you'll be beef steers by and by. Whoopie-tie-I-O, get along, you little dogies. It's your misfortune and none of my own. Whoopie-tie-I-O, get along, you little dogies, for you know Wyoming will be your new home. As I walked out in the streets of Laredo, as I walked out in Laredo one day, I spied a cowpuncher all wrapped in white linen, all wrapped in white linen and cold as the clay. I see by your outfit that you are a cowboy. These words he did say as I boldly passed by. Come sit down beside me and hear my sad story, for I'm shot in the breast and I know I must die. So bang the drum slowly and play the fife lowly, and sing the death march as you carry me along. Take me to the green valley and pour the sod o'er me, for I'm a young cowboy and I know I done wrong. It was once in the saddle I used to go daring. It was once in the saddle I rode so gay. First to the dram house and then to the card house. Shot in the back and I'm dying today. So bury me beside my knife and six-shooter. Put the spurs on my heels and my rifle by my side, and on my coffin place a bottle of brandy so the cowboys can drink as I take my last ride. So we banged the drum slowly and played the fife lowly, and bitterly wept as we carried him along. For we loved our comrade so brave, strong, and handsome. We loved our comrade, though we know he'd done wrong. Last night, as I lay on the prairie and looked up at the stars in the sky, I wondered if ever a cowboy would drift to that sweet by and by. Ah, the road to that bright, happy region, it's a dim, narrow trail, so they say, but the broad one that leads to perdition is posted and blazed all the way. Roll on, roll on, roll on, little dogies, roll on, roll on, roll on, roll on, roll on, little dogies, roll on. Oh, they say he will never forget you. He knows every action and look. So for safety's sake, better get branded. Get your name in his big tally book. They say there will be a great roundup where cowboys like dogies will stand to be cut by the riders of judgment who are posted and know every brand. And they tell of another great owner who's never or stalked, so they say. He always makes room for the sinner who drifts from the straight, narrow way. Roll on, roll on, roll on, little dogies, roll on, roll on, roll on, roll on, roll on, little dogies, roll on. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. If you want to sing along, feel free. I expect more than half the audience can sing better than I can, so I can use the help. And if you have any questions, shout them out now or at the end. We're going to do one set tonight instead of two. It'll be a good long set, and you'll probably hear something close to 30 songs. Now, the most famous song that was published in 1910 in Cowboy Songs and Other Frontier Ballads was written by someone named Dr. Brewster Higley. He wrote this as a poem called My Western Home, and it was published in a small-town Kansas newspaper in 1873. His neighbor, Daniel Kelly, set it to music, and the song sort of bounced around the Southwest and the West From that point until when grandfather published it, it was the first time it had been in a book and the first time it had actually been in print since that Kansas newspaper. Now, you're going to know this song, I know, and if you want to sing along, go ahead, but there's several verses that don't get sung very often, and I like to sing them because they're as beautiful as the verse that we all know. Oh, give me a land where the bright diamond sands flow leisurely down to the stream, where the graceful white swan goes gliding along like a maid in a heavenly dream. How often at night, with the heavens so bright with the light from the glittering stars, have I stood there amazed and asked as I gazed, does their glory exceed that of ours? Where the air is so pure, the zephyrs so free, and the breezes so balmy and light, I would not exchange my home on the range for all of the cities so bright. Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Home, home on the range. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a copyright lawsuit about that song years later when some bunch in Arizona claimed that their song, My Arizona Home, was the same song. But the courts went and said, no, it's not. And they used my grandfather's recordings and his notes about the song to show and prove that it had existed long before the Arizona people jumped up. So Higley and his neighbor Daniel Kelly got the copyright. Of course, they both passed on by that point, but their families were really happy to see this money roll in. And that's showbiz, isn't it? By the 1933 and 1934, my grandfather had sort of not moved on and left, but moved to recording all kinds of songs. He would record work songs, he would record children's play party games, he would record church services, personal narratives, and prison laments. When he and his son, Alan, who at the time was 18 years old, embarked on their 1933 and 1934 expedition for the auspices of the Library of Congress, they were fitted out with a 390-pound state-of-the-art direct-to aluminum disc recording gear, which was built into the back of a Model A Ford. And off they went. During that 2-year period, they produced the book American Ballads and Folk Songs and traveled probably 10,000 miles. There were no motels back then, so a lot of times they would sleep by the side of the road on the ground or in a yard of a neighbor who they were recording. Also, in 1933, they ran across a Negro in Angola prison in Louisiana, and this fellow claimed to be the king of the 12-string guitar. And so they said, well, let's record this guy. And he was in prison there for a charge of assault with intent to commit murder on a 10-year charge. He had previously served time in a Texas prison for murder. But nevertheless, the Lomaxes recorded him and later hired him to be their chauffeur. When they were driving, and they put him in a uniform, when they were driving around the South 90 years ago, 2 white men and a black man, the black man had to clearly be in a subservient role, or they probably all 3 would have been lynched. So the second book to emerge from that 1933-34 expedition is called Negro Folk Songs as Sung by Leadbelly. Now, some of you may or may not know Leadbelly. You may know some of these songs, but before I get to that, I would like to point out that the gentleman by the name of George Harrison of the Beatles is quoted widely as saying, if it weren't for Leadbelly, there would be no Lonnie Donegan. If there were no Lonnie Donegan, there would be no Beatles. Donegan, of course, being the man who started the skiffle craze in England and claimed he had written all these songs of Leadbelly's that he was putting out. Of course, they were in a book 20 years before, but that didn't stop him from trying to steal the copyright. So we're going to hear a little Leadbelly now, and I hope you'll enjoy that. I'm going to blast through 4 or 5 and save one for later. Well, I might be right and I might be wrong, but you're going to miss me when I'm gone. Oh, the Rock Island line is a mighty fine road. The Rock Island line is the road to ride. If you want to ride it, got to ride it like you're flying. Get your ticket at the station at the Rock Island line. Jesus died to save our sins. Hope to God I get to see him again. Oh, the Rock Island line is a mighty fine road. The Rock Island line is the road to ride. If you want to ride it, got to ride it like you're flying. Get your ticket at the station at the Rock Island line. There's old Moses on the Red Sea shore, smoothing those waves with a 2x4. Oh, the Rock Island line is a mighty fine road. The Rock Island line is the road to ride. If you want to ride it, got to ride it like you're flying. Get your ticket at the station at the Rock Island line. When I was a little bitty baby, my mama would rock me in the cradle in them old cotton fields back home. It was down in Louisiana, just about a mile from Texarkana, in them old cotton fields back home. When them cotton balls get rotten, you can't pick very much cotton in them old cotton fields back home. It may sound a little bit funny, but we never made very much money in them old cotton fields back home. Massa told the boys to pick a bale of cotton. Yeah, Massa told the boys to pick a bale a day. Oh, Lordy, pick a bale of cotton, Anna. Oh, Lordy, pick a bale a day. Jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. Gonna jump down, turn around, pick a bale a day. Oh, Lordy, pick a bale of cotton, Anna. Oh, Lordy, pick a bale a day. My wife and I can pick a bale of cotton. Yeah, my wife and I can pick a bale a day. Oh, Lordy, pick a bale of cotton, Anna. Oh, Lordy, pick a bale a day. Mr. Joel Moore can pick a bale of cotton. Yeah, Mr. Joel Moore can pick a bale a day. Oh, Lordy, pick a bale of cotton, Anna. Oh, Lordy, pick a bale a day. Jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. Gonna jump down, turn around, pick a bale a day. Pick a bale, pick a bale, pick a bale of cotton. Gonna pick a bale, pick a bale, pick a bale a day. Pick a bale, pick a bale, pick a bale of cotton. Gonna pick a bale, pick a bale, pick a bale a day. Oh, and actually a bale of cotton is depends on what country you're in, but it can weigh anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 pounds. And Leadbelly said the most cotton he ever saw anyone pick was 800 pounds. So nobody picks a bale of cotton, not in one day. And it was tough work, too. You'd have to bend down, and you got thorns and stuff, so not a good job to have. Okay, we got one more Leadbelly coming up, and that is this one, which you may have remembered as being the theme song for a television show back in the 70s and 80s. When you go to Houston, you better walk right. You better not stagger, and you better not fight. Sheriff Benson will arrest you. He will carry you down. If the jury finds you guilty, then you're penitentiary bound. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a ever-loving light on me. Well, you wake up in the morning, you hear the ding-dong ring. They march to the table. It's the same damn thing. There's only one table, knife and fork and a pan. If you say anything about it, you're in trouble with the man. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a ever-loving light on me. Now Thelma says she loves me, but I believe she tell a lie. She hadn't been to see me since the last July. She brought me a little coffee. She brought me a little tea. She brought me nearly everything but the jailhouse key. Yonder comes Sheriff Jack Smith. How in the world do you know? I saw him by his big hat and his 44 out. I never heard it. Excuse me. And I wonder why deputies traveling through this land. I heard him tell the trustee, I'm the transfer man. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a ever-loving light on me. Yonder comes Dr. Milton. How in the world do you know? Well, I can tell him by his big hat. Whoops. I can tell. He gave me some tablets on the day before, but there never was a doctor traveling through this land that could cure the fever of a convict man. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a ever-loving light on me. Yonder comes Miss Rosie. How in the world do you know? I can tell her by her apron and the dress she wore, umbrella on her shoulder, pardon paper in her hand. She come to tell the trustee, turn loose of my man, let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a ever-loving light on me, ever-loving light on me, ever-loving light on me. That, yes, sir.
As a resident Sugarlander,
Yes.
got a question for you.
Okay.
The first verse, you said penitentiary bound.
Uh-huh.
I've also read Sugarland bound
Ah.
because the story I've read, and you're the expert, was that he was in the Sugarland prison and he would actually sing for the warden there in Sugarland, and the midnight special was the train that delivered
Right.
prisoners there at midnight. And I'm sure you know Steven Spielberg's first movie, Sugarland Express. So, but you said penitentiary bound.
That's true.
Sugarland bound. So that's my question.
It was actually a prison farm, but it was in Sugarland, and that was the legend. If the light from that train shone on you, you would get loose and you would be free. Leadbelly, that was when he was in prison in Texas for murder, and he was serving a 20-year sentence. He got out in 6.5, and part of the reason he got out was he talked to, my grandfather talked to the governor of Texas, and the governor listened to Leadbelly and said, okay, when I leave office, I'll pardon him. He only pardoned 5 people. Leadbelly was one of them. So, and he later got out of the Louisiana prison by getting his music to the governor of that state. But in that case, he also got out because he had done an exemplary job of working. So he wound up with 30 years of prison, served 10 of them. And if you read the account in the book my uncle and grandfather wrote, there is a section where Leadbelly tells his own story. And if you read that, you will find that he had actually killed another man and had another man down with a pistol that he had pointed at his head at point-blank range, and it misfired. So, yeah, and the second time he went to prison was for a big knife fight where he cut up several people. He was a tough hombre, I'll tell you that. All right. After, let's see. Okay, here's a couple more that Leadbelly sang, but they were not his, he didn't write them. One of them was written supposedly by an inmate named Clear Rock. The other was probably partly written by Leadbelly, but they're both very interesting songs, and they have a very interesting hidden message in them. So we're going to blast through 2 more Leadbellys. Well, not really his, but 2 he sang. Well, last Monday morning, Lord, 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 my daddy went a-hunting. Lord, 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 he was hunting for the gray goose. Lord, 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 and he went to the big woods. Lord, 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 and he took along his hound dogs. Lord, 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 and he took along his Zulu. Lord, 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 and the hound dogs got to whining. Lord, 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 and up went the Zulu. Lord, 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 and along come the gray goose. Lord, 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 and he pulled the hammer way back. Lord, 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 and the Zulu went blooey. Lord, 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 and down he come a-falling. Lord, 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 took 3 days to find him. Lord, 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 and we put him on the wagon. Lord, 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 and we hauled him to the big house. Lord, 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 and your wife and my wife. Lord, 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 they had a feather picking. Lord, 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 and we put him into parboil. Lord, 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 took 2 weeks to parboil. Lord, 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 then we put him in the oven. Lord, 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 took 3 days to bake him. Lord, 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 then we put him on the table. Lord, 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 but the knife wouldn't cut him. Lord, 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 and a fork wouldn't stick him. Lord, 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 so we threw him in the hog yard. Lord, 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 but the hogs wouldn't eat him. Lord, 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 and he broke that belly's jawbone. Lord, 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 so on to the sawmill. Lord, 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 and he broke that saw's teeth out. Lord, 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 well, the last time I seen him, Lord, 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 he's flying across the ocean. Lord, 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 with a long string of goslings. Lord, 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 they was all going quick quack. Lord, 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 well, the hell with the gray goose. Lord, Lord, Lord. Have you heard the latest in the song about that little boll weevil done been here and gone? He's looking for a home, just a-looking for a home. Boll weevil is a tiny bug, comes from Mexico, they say. Came here to try this Texas soil, and he thought he'd better stay. He's looking for a home, just a-looking for a home. Well, the first time I saw the boll weevil, he was sitting on the square. Next time I saw the boll weevil, he had all his family there. They're looking for a home, just looking for a home. Farmer took the boll weevil and he buried him in hot sand. Boll weevil said to the farmer, I'll stand it like a man, for I found my home. Yes, I found my home. Farmer covered the boll weevil and he covered him in cold ice. Boll weevil said to the farmer, oh, that's mighty cool and nice, for I found my home. Yes, I found my home. Farmer took the boll weevil and he fed him kerosene. Boll weevil said to the farmer, best poison I ever seen, for I found my home. Yes, I found my home. Farmer said to the merchant, I was in an awful fix. Boll weevil ate my cotton up and all I've got is sticks, and I'm looking for a home. Now I'm looking for a home. Merchant got half the cotton, boll weevil got the rest, and all that farmer's wife got was one old cotton dress, all full of holes, all full of holes. If anyone ever asks you, who was it writ this song? Tell him was a dark-skinned fella with a pair of blue overalls on. He's looking for a home, just looking for a home. All right. Thank you. What's the hidden message in those two songs? To the blacks, the message was, no matter what you do, we are going to be here. So it was a song of liberation to the blacks, and the white people they just thought it was a song. In fact, Brooke Benton took it to number 2 on the pop charts in 1962. So there you go. We'll get back to Leadbelly in a minute, but we're going to move on down the trail. Here's 2 songs about remarkable women. One of them was from the 19th century, and one from the 20th. One is a real person, and one is a composite fictional character who represents the trials and tribulations that many suffered. Don't you remember sweet Betsy from Pike, who crossed the wide mountains with her lover Ike, with 2 yoke of oxen, an old yaller dog, a tall Shanghai rooster, and a big spotted hog. One evening quite early, they camped by the Platte, close down by the road on a green grassy flat. Our Betsy, quite tired, lay down in repose, and Ike gazed in wonder at his Pike County rose. One evening quite early, way out on the plains one bright starry night, they broke out the whiskey, and our Betsy got tight. She sang and she shouted and danced o'er the plain and showed her bare bosoms to the whole wagon train. The Indians came down in a fierce screaming horde, and Betsy was scared they would scalp her adored. So behind that first wagon our Betsy did crawl and held off those hostiles with musket and ball. They stopped at Salt Lake to inquire of the way, and Brigham Young declared that our Betsy must stay. Our Betsy, quite terrified, ran like a deer, while Brigham pawed ground like a wild longhorn steer. Way out on the desert our Betsy gave out, laid down in the sand and her head lolled about. Ike, quite terrified, looked on in surprise, said, "My Betsy, get up, you'll get sand in your eyes." The oxen both ran off, and the Shanghai ran off, and the oxen both died. And on that day their last piece of bacon was fried. They climbed to the top of a very tall hill and gazed down in wonder at old Placerville. Long Ike and sweet Betsy were invited to a dance, and Ike wore a pair of his Pike County pants, and Betsy was festooned with ribbons and rings. Said Ike, "You're an angel, but where are your wings?" A miner said, "Betsy, will you dance with me?" "I will, old hoss, but just don't make me too free. Don't dance me too hard, and if you want to know why, God dang it, I'm chock full of strong alkali." Long Ike and sweet Betsy were married, of course, but Ike, being jealous, soon got a divorce. Our Betsy, quite satisfied, said with a shout, "Goodbye, you big Lomax, I'm glad you walked out," singing "Too-rely-oo-rely-ay," singing "Too-rely-oo-rely-ay." Well, what do you think about that song? I mean, this woman went all halfway across the United States with this guy, gets to a California mining camp in 1849, and he dumps her. Well, I found out there is an alternate verse ending. So, Long Ike and sweet Betsy were married, of course, but Ike, being jealous, soon got a divorce. Our Betsy, quite satisfied, said with a smile, "I got 3 men wanting me within half a mile," singing "Too-rely-oo-rely-ay." Well, I don't know. What do you think? You don't know what these men had in mind, This was, after all, a California mining camp 100 and some odd years ago. So I wrote my own last verse. It's folk music, isn't it? So I've wrote my own, and you're going to be among the very first people in the entire universe and whatever else is out there to hear this verse. Betsy's next husband was a miner by trade. He claimed he knew where a strike could be made. And he and Betsy pawed all through the ground, and 6 months later, big nuggets they found, singing "To Rely, Rely." So there we go. Got her a husband and got her some money. Got her a little jingle there. She traveled that. They said that the people who went from the Midwest over to California in the gold rush of 1849, they couldn't leave before the middle of April because of the spring floods. And they had to get there before the snows blocked the mountain passes. So I worked it out to where they had to average 18 miles a day. And this was in a wagon train, and this was on no roads, just ruts. They would follow what ruts they could find, thinking that as long as they were headed west, everything was fine. But a lot of them didn't make it at all. So they didn't have to worry about finding a husband. Okay, the other interesting, wonderful woman is actually a real person. Anyone know who Amy McPherson is? Well, Amy can be considered the starting point for electronic televangelism. She got onto the radio very early on. She was a preacher, a very fiery Pentecostal preacher. And she got on the radio. She built herself a radio station, as you will hear in this song. Did you ever hear the story about Amy McPherson? Amy McPherson, that beautiful person. She weighed 180 and her hair was red. Preached a wicked sermon, so the papers all said, "Hidey, hidey, hidey, hi, hody, 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 ho." Amy built herself a radio station to broadcast preaching to the nation. Hired a man named Fred who knew enough to run the radio while Amy did her stuff. Hidey, 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 hi, hody, 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 ho. Held a camp meeting down in Ocean Park. Preached from early morning till after dark. Said the benediction, folded up the tent, and nobody knew where Amy went. When Amy McPherson got back from her journey, told her story to the district attorney, said she'd been kidnapped on a lonely trail, and despite a lot of questions, Amy stuck to her tale. Well, the grand jury started an investigation, came up with a lot of spicy information, found out about a love nest down at Carmel by the sea, where the liquor was expensive, but the loving was free. Found a cottage with a breakfast nook, a folding bed with a worn-out look. The slats were busted and the springs were loose, and the dents in the mattress fitted Amy's caboose. Radio Fred's a going hound. He's a going yet, and he ain't been found. Well, they had his description, but they got it too late, because since they got it, he's lost a lot of weight. Well, in my story, in the usual way, about a lady preacher's holiday. If you don't get the moral, then you're the gal for me. There's lots more cottages down at Carmel by the sea. Hidey, 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 hi, hody, 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 ho. Pete Seeger had a song that was the one I just did, which, as it turned out, is hokum. Amy was kidnapped. She was found wandering in the desert in Mexico, south of Douglas, Arizona, 800 miles from Carmel. And she was sunburned, covered in thorns, malnutrition, and bruises. She had escaped from the kidnappers. She was treated in the hospital in Douglas, Arizona, and when she was able, she came back on the train to her Los Angeles home. 20,000 people met that train. She built a church overlooking Echo Lake in Los Angeles that still stands today. The Foursquare religion she founded can be found in over 100 countries, and you can go on the website and find all manner of her sermons and other things about her. There was a 1979 movie starring Betty Davis and Faye Dunaway that explored the relationship between her mother and Amy. And there was a fabulous book, Sister Amy, that tells the whole story. But that was where televangelism began, even though it was on the radio. She was the most prominent evangelist in the first half of the 20th century and had a worldwide audience. That radio station, there were no FCC regulations, so it was blasting out those sermons all over the world. She even had already done a world tour by the time that she was kidnapped. All righty, a very interesting lady for sure. Now, the next two songs have a combined age of 761 years, give or take a few decades. The first one recounts an incident that happened in 1761 in an area that is now part of the United States. Of course, it wasn't then because there was no United States in 1761. But this is a true story, unfortunately, called there are several titles of it, The Rattlesnake Song and On Springfield Mountain, but it goes like this. I once knew a man who lived on a hill, I knew him well, come a rattle to maroo-rah-ree. He went out to see if he could mow, to see if we could take a show, come a rattle to maroo-rah-ree. He'd scarcely mow, half round the wheel, when up jumped come a rattlesnake and bit him on the heel, come a rattle to maroo-rah-ree. He lay right down, upon the ground, and closed his eyes, and looked all around, come a rattle to maroo-rah-ree. Oh, Pappy, dear, go spread the news, and here comes Sow Wow without her shoe-woos, come a rattle to maroo-rah-ree. Oh, Pappy, dear, go tell my gal wow that I'm going to die for I know I shall wow, come a rattle to maroo-rah-ree. Oh, John, why did you go way out in the meadow this day to mow come a rattle to maroo-rah-ree. Oh, Sal, why don't you know when grass gets ripe, it must be mow come a rattle to maroo-rah-ree. Come all young men, and warning, wake, and don't get bit with by a rattlesnake, wake, come a rattle to maroo-rah-ree. Come all young girls, and shed a tear, for this young man, who died right here, come a rattle to maroo-rah-ree. There we are. Timothy Merrick. August 7th, 1761, in an area in what is now Massachusetts. Now, the next song is at least 500 years old. It was found in a book in Scotland in 1547. So if it was in a book in 1547, not even 100 years after the printing press was invented, you have to figure it existed sometime prior to 1547. So I'm just saying 500 years and close enough. My grandfather and uncle published it in Cowboy Songs and Other Frontier Ballads. 35 verses. Yes, 35. But, hey, don't worry. I've trimmed it a little bit. But I'm telling you, I did not do a brutal job of editing like Bruce Springsteen did. This guy cut it down to 9 verses. 9 verses. Left out the ending, or rather the endings. I mean, really. So, you do the math. Bruce Springsteen, 9 verses, 0 endings. Me, John Lomax III, 18 verses and all the endings. So, it's clear. Miss Mousie's door, knocked 3 times, gave out a roar, Uh-huh, uh-huh. He walked right in, took her on his knee. Uh-huh, uh-huh. He walked right in, took her on his knee, said, Miss Mousie, will you marry me? Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Not without my Uncle Rat's consent. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Without my Uncle Rat's consent, I wouldn't marry the president. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. When Uncle Rat gave his consent, uh-huh, uh-huh. When Uncle Rat gave his consent, the weasel wrote the publishment. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Oh, where shall the wedding supper be? Uh-huh, uh-huh. Where shall the wedding supper be? Way down yonder in a hollow tree. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. First come in was a flying moth. Uh-huh, uh-huh. First come in was a flying moth. He laid out the tablecloth. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was a little June bug. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was a little June bug. Brought some whiskey in a jug. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was a bumblebee. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was a bumblebee dancing a jig with a two-legged flea. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was a spotted cow. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was a spotted cow, tried to dance but didn't know how. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was a little brown snake. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was a little brown snake, coiled himself round the wedding cake. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Now it gets weird. Next come in was a yaller dog. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was a yaller dog, chased Miss Mousie in a hollow log. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was an old tomcat. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Next come in was an old tomcat, ate Miss Mousie just like that. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Froggy, he went down to the lake. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Froggy, he went back to the lake. He got swallowed by a big black snake. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Big black snake crawled out on land. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Big black snake crawled out on land. He was killed by a noble man. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Noble man went off to France. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Noble man went off to France. That's the end of my romance. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. That's my story. 1, 2, 3. Uh-huh, uh-huh. That's my story. 1, 2, 3. The snake, the frog, and Miss Mousie. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. There's my guitar on the shelf. Uh-huh, uh-huh. There's my guitar on the shelf. Want any more? Gotta sing it yourself. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. The most bizarre folk song ever. All the heroes and heroines get killed. 2 of the murderers escape scot-free. Well, those Scots, they have long winters, I guess. And 1500, you have to figure this is all coded in the frogs and the French and the Scots and so forth. So I'm not totally sure how it all fit together back then. But I'm glad it made it this far. And now it's a children's song, practically. All right, we're going to go to what I call, what I call my Texas set. I live in Nashville, but I grew up in Texas, down in Houston, and I went to school at UT and then wound up in Nashville 50 years ago to work in the music business. And did that, and then last year I decided to become a performer. So here I am, and thank you. This is a song, a pre-Civil War song, actually. Come along, girls, and listen to my noise, and don't go out with Texian boys. Oh, if you do, your ration it will be Johnny cake and limousine and sassafras tea. Johnny cake and venison and sassafras tea. When they go a-courting, let me tell you what they wear. An old leather coat all picked and bare, an old straw hat more brim than crown, and a pair of dirty socks they've worn the year round, a pair of dirty socks they've worn the year round. When they go a-preaching, let me tell you what they ride. An old pack saddle all covered with hide, a mohair girth made out of a rope, straddle on a horse that can't fetch a lope, straddle on a horse that can't fetch a lope. For your wedding supper, it's beef and cornbread. There it is to eat with the ceremony said. If you want to drink, you'll drink from a gourd. Set it in a corner and cover it with a board. Set it in a corner and cover it with a board. You'll live in a hut with a crude log wall that ain't got any windows at all, with a clapboard roof and a puncheon floor. For that is the way all Texans are, that is the way all Texans are. Brandy is brandy any way you fix it. A Texian's a Texian any way you fix him, while other good folk are home in bed. The devil is a-working in the Texian's head. The devil is a-working in the Texian's head. 180 were challenged by Travis to die with a line that he drew with his sword when the battle was nigh. And them that would fight to the death cross over, and them that would live better fly. And over the line stepped 179. High up Santa Ana, we're killing your soldiers below, so that men, wherever they go, will remember the Alamo, the Alamo, the Alamo. They sent a young scout from the battlements bloody and loud, with words of farewell from the garrison valiant and proud. Fear not, my dying, my darling, if Texas be sovereign and free, for we'll never surrender and ever will liberty be. High up Santa Ana, we're killing your soldiers below, so that men forever will know and remember the Alamo, the Alamo. Jim Bowie lay dying, but his powder was ready and dry. From flat on his back, Bowie killed him a few in reply. And old Davy Crockett was laughing and singing with gallantry fierce in his eye. For God and for freedom, a man more than willing to die. High up Santa Ana, we're killing your soldiers below, so that men forever will know and remember the Alamo, the Alamo, the Alamo. Hey! So you probably are wondering, 179 crossed the line. What happened to the other guy? Well, the other guy was a man named Moses Rose, and Moses had already been in several battles. And so when Travis challenged him to die, he said, I do not wish to die in this place, and I will do all that I can to avoid doing so. He slipped out in the evening, got through the Mexican lines, and survived. Otherwise, how would we know about the line in the sand? And some, of course, dispute that account. There's still people wrangling about the Alamo, the true story of the Alamo. But what it was the Texans not only killed something like 1,500 to 2,000 Mexicans during the 13-day standoff, they also gave Sam Houston time to assemble the army down near Houston, where he won the Battle of San Jacinto, and that was the start of Texas independence, which Texas, of course, was an independent republic for 9 years. All right, let's see. This song has a nice circular history, and it's pretty relevant, I would say. In 1934, my grandfather recorded this song at Darrington Prison. He recorded it as sung by a preacher there who was actually the preacher who served all of the prisons in Texas, would go around and preaching to the inmates. And he said he wrote it. No one knows for sure if he did. His name was Sin Killer Griffin. How's that for a name for a preacher? Sin Killer figured out that if he sang in his sermons, he would be more effective than just preaching. So this is the song that he created, or said he did, or at least popularized, and then it lay in the Library of Congress for something like 30 years or so, and Erich von Schmidt found it. He recorded it, and then a whole bunch of folkies recorded it. And it's a song about the greatest natural disaster in American history. Galveston had no seawall to keep the water down, so the high tide from the ocean blew the waves all over town. Wasn't that a mighty storm? Wasn't that a mighty storm in the morning? Wasn't that a mighty storm that blew the people away? The lightning played around, and the thunder began to roar. The wind began to howl, and the rain began to pour. The trees on the island blew down, and the houses blew away. Some strived and drowned, some died most every way. Wasn't that a mighty storm? Wasn't that a mighty storm with water? Wasn't that a mighty storm that blew the people away? The trumpets gave a warning, you better leave this place. But no one thought of leaving till death stared them in the face. The trains, they were all loaded with the people leaving town. But the waves from the ocean blocked the trestle, and the trains, they went on down. Wasn't that a mighty storm? Wasn't that a mighty storm? Wasn't that a mighty storm that blew the people away? Death, like a cruel master, when the wind began to howl, rode in on a team of horses. Oh, death, please let me go. Death, your hands is icy. I can feel them on my knees. You've done taken away my mother, and now you've come for me. Wasn't that a mighty storm? Wasn't that a mighty storm? Wasn't that a mighty storm that blew the people away? Now, I wrote this verse my own self. Some say 12,000 died that day. Others, it was just 10. But Galveston was a big city, and it never was again. The barges, they were loaded on the very next day, piled high with scores of corpses that they dumped in Galveston Bay. Wasn't that a mighty storm? Wasn't that a mighty storm? Wasn't that a mighty storm in the morning that blew the people away? There we go. Thank you. Of course, no one knows how many died because a lot of the bodies were washed to sea, and a lot of people who survived didn't bother to come back, because what was there to come back to? The island was basically swept clean, with the exception, I believe, of the Fremont Hotel downtown. And then 15 years later, they had built a seawall. In 1915, the hurricane only claimed 5,000 lives. And then, as you may know, they raised the level of the entire city of Galveston, the Army Corps of Engineers. And, of course, Galveston's on a sandbar, so it gets hurricanes all the time. I'm going to leave old Texas now. They got no use for the longhorn plow. They've plowed and fenced my cattle range, and the people there are all so strange. I'll take my horse and I'll grab my rope. I'll hit the trail at an easy lope. I'll say adios to the Alamo and point myself towards Mexico. The cold hard ground shall be my bed. The saddle seat will hold my head. I'll tell St. Peter when I go, a cowboy's soul ain't filled with snow. But in that far-off cattle land, he sometimes acted like a man. Uncle Allen is regarded as the most prominent folklorist of the second half of the 20th century and maybe the century altogether. He recorded all over the United States, in numerous European countries, throughout the Caribbean, and even in one African country. He left many books behind. He passed away about 20 years ago at the age of 90. He left, in 1962, Folk Songs of North America is a big, thick book this big that had a whole bunch of songs that weren't in American ballads and folk songs. And he also wrote his biography, his autobiography, The Land Where the Blues Began. John Swed, who chronicled his life in a biography called The Man Who Recorded the World. Allen won the National Medal of Arts, the Naris Trustees Award, and 2 Grammy Awards. The Grammys came from work of the Complete Library of Congress recordings of Jelly Roll Morton. This was an early example of oral history. Allen would interview Jelly Roll, who would tell his story, Jelly Roll being one of the founders of jazz music. And he would tell Allen all about what was happening around the turn of the last century when jazz was being formed by himself and a number of other artists. And as he would tell these stories to Allen, he would illustrate them by playing the piano, which was his instrument. And he would do passages to illustrate this or to say, well, so-and-so played it this way, but I play it this way. And that won 2 Grammys. Allen also, after the recordings that he did with his father in 1933 and 1934, he went off to record in Haiti. He spent a whole year recording in Haiti and recorded enough to have an 8-CD set come out about 15 years ago called The Music of Haiti. He did this in 1934 and 35, but the quality of the recordings was such that it took a long time for technology to be able to put them into a more listenable state. After he did The Music of Haiti, which is a 7-CD, 1 DVD box set with a replica of their journal and pictures of still pictures made during the time, he went over to the Bahamas, to Nassau. And he was over there, and he heard this folk song, and he thought, well, this is kind of interesting. The natives didn't know who wrote it or much about it, just that they'd been singing it for a long time. So he thought, well, let's record this. And he found the Cleveland Simmons Group in 1935 and recorded them. You can go on YouTube. There it is, the 1935 recording. 31 years later, well, you may know what happened with that song once I start singing it. We sailed on the sloop John B., my grandfather and me. Round Nassau Harbor we did roam, stayed awake all night, had a big fight. I feel so break up, I want to go home. So heist up the John B. sail and see how the mainsail sets. Send for the captain ashore, I want to go home. Please let me go home. I want to go home. I feel so break up. I want to go home. Well, the first mate, he got drunk. He busted up the people's trunks. Constable had to come and take him away. Sheriff John Stone, please leave me alone. I feel so break up, I want to go home. Well, the cook, he got fits. He threw out all of the grits, and he went and ate up all of the corn. I want to go home. Please let me go home. This is the worst ship since I ever been born. So heist up the John B. sail and see how the mainsail sets. Send for the captain ashore, I want to go home. Please let me go home. I want to go home. This is the worst trip that I've ever been on. So, during the 31 years between the time Alan recorded that and the Beach Boys had a #3 pop hit with it, off of Pet Sounds, I might add, which some have called one of the greatest rock albums ever made. Brian Wilson didn't want the song on there because they didn't write it, but Capitol Records said it's on. And it set up Good Vibrations and helped make that. That was a comeback album for them. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the whole English invasion had eclipsed the Beach Boys' popularity, so they were trying to put something out that would compete with those artists. And that one line at the end was Brian Wilson changed it to the worst trip I've ever been on, to do with his indulgence in LSD. Between the time they recorded it and 1931, Pete Seeger recorded it, the Weavers recorded it, the Kingston Trio recorded it, Dick Dale, the king of the surf guitar, recorded it, soul singer Jerry Butler recorded it, and numerous others. So it was an amazing song, and it's still with us. When 2 years after he recorded that song, Sloop John B., Alan was over in the fishing area off the coast of Virginia, and he heard the Menhaden fishermen singing this song, and he recorded that. And my father really thinks it's one of the most beautiful songs that we have. Bye, 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 my Rosianna. I'm going away, but not to stay, but I won't be home tomorrow. The big shipboat comes round the bend. Bye, bye, my Rosianna, loaded down with fishermen. Bye, bye, my Rosianna. Bye, 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 my Rosianna. I'm going away, but not to stay, and I won't be home tomorrow. The stars are rocking high above. Bye, bye, my Rosianna, for the ocean is a sailor's love. Bye, bye, my Rosianna. The green sea's rolling by his side. Bye, bye, my Rosianna, for the ocean is a sailor's bride. Bye, bye, my Rosianna. I think I heard the captain say, bye-bye, my Rosianna, that we won't be home till next payday. Bye-bye, my Rosianna. Bye-bye, 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 bye, bye-bye. Bye-bye, my Rosianna. I'm going away, but not to stay. Bye-bye, my Rosianna. I want to talk just a second to kind of give shout outs to some of the other family members. Altogether, we have produced 50 books, 9 different members of this family. My cousin, Anna Lomax Wood, Alan's daughter, Dr. Anna Lomax Wood, produced Songs of Earth 2 years ago through the University of Mississippi Press. My son, the late John Nova Lomax, had already written 2 books about events and places in Houston, the city where he lived after he moved back from Nashville. My cousin, Dr. Naomi Hawes Bishop, wrote a book with her husband about a year they spent in a very, very remote village in Nepal, where they were studying the culture there for their anthropological studies. And my brother Joe, who passed away in 1988 and who began singing folk songs like I'm doing in about 1979, he was the publisher and the co-editor with me of a book called For the Sake of the Song, the Townes Van Zandt Songbook. We put this out in 1978 before anyone much had heard of Townes Van Zandt. He hadn't had a hit record yet. The book became a collector's item during the 45 years since we published it. And last year, I had a signed hardback that I sold for $1,800. Go look online, you'll see. And speaking of online, Bye-Bye My Rosianna, there are 2 YouTube versions, one from a German choir and one from an English choir, that is kind of hilarious to hear them work through it. All right, let's see. Alan was not the only National Medal of Arts winner in our family. His sister, Bess Lomax Hawes, won that award as well. This is the highest honor that an artist in America can achieve, and it's not just limited to music. It's all types of art expression. She was a member of the Almanac Singers. She was a college professor. She was an author and helped discover the Georgia Sea Island Singers and wrote the book of their existence and their history with one of their members, their leader, Bessie Jones. She taught guitar to classes in rooms like this with 15 or 20 people, and she would go around fixing people's fingering, their capos, their tuning, and whatnot. One of her students was Ry Cooter. Then, for 15 years, she oversaw the folk arts program of the National Endowment for the Arts in Washington, D.C., and in that job, she helped dispense millions and millions of dollars to all manner of worthy folk projects. But you might know her by one song. She only wrote one song, and she co-wrote that song in 1949. And here's the way that song goes. Did you ever hear the story of a man named Charlie on that tragic and fateful day? With 10 cents in his pocket, Charlie kissed his wife and family, went to ride on the MTA. Charlie handed in his dime at the Scully Square station with a change at Jamaica Plain. But when he got there, the conductor told him one more nickel. Charlie couldn't get off of that train. And did he ever return? No, he never returned, and his fate is still unlearned. What a pity. He may ride forever 'neath the streets of Boston. He's the man who never returned. All night long, Charlie rides through the station wondering what's going to become of me. How can I afford to see my sister in Chelsea or my cousin in Roxbury? Charlie's wife goes down to the Kendall Square station every day at 2:15, and through the open window she hands Charlie a sandwich as the train goes rumbling through. Citizens of Boston, don't you think it's a scandal how the people have to pay and pay? Fight the fare increase. Vote for George O'Ryan. Let's get Charlie off the MTA. And did he ever return? No, he never returned. And his fate is still unlearned, poor old Charlie. He may ride forever 'neath the streets of Boston. He's the man who never returned. The man who never returned. The man who never returned. 10 years after that, the Kingston Trio had a top 20 hit with that song. They put a goofy intro on it and had a monster record. And in Boston, as you probably know, they have subway and MTA problems all the time. And every time that happens, here comes MTA again. I want to go now. There's one more out that she did not write this or have anything to do with it, except she sang it at family gatherings, and it's a song I just love. Some of you may know this one too. Down in the valley so low, hang your head over. Hear the wind blow, hear the wind blow, boys, hear the wind blow. Hang your head over, hear the wind blow. Hey, if you don't love me, love who you please. Just stay in touch and give my heart ease. Give my heart ease, love. Give my heart ease. Just stay in touch and give my heart ease. Roses love sunshine, angels love dew. Roses love sunshine, violets love dew. Angels in heaven know I love you. Know I love you, dear. Know I love you. Angels in heaven know I love you. Send me a letter, send it by mail, send it in care of the Birmingham jail. Birmingham jail, of Birmingham jail. Send it in care of the Birmingham jail. Thank you, and thank you to Joel for putting me out here tonight, and thank all of you for coming. We got a few more. We've reached the point where I want to do a little bit about my father, who was considered the dean of Texas folk singers. He established the Houston Folklore Society with a number of other people in 1951. And out of that group, which they were the ones that helped give a stage to a number of different artists that would not have had a stage otherwise if the Houston Folklore Society had not put them on. That list would include Towns Van Zandt, of course, Steve Earle, Lucinda Williams, Nancy Griffith, K.T. Oslin, Eric Taylor, Don Sanders, Dana Cooper, Shake Russell, and on and on and on. All of these people might have been only singing to their friends in living rooms had the Folklore Society not put them onto various programs. This was in the 50s when folk music was actually a really important part of the American music scene. So I want to sing a few of his real quick, and then we'll get on to our other destinations for the evening. My father's also managed Lightning Hopkins for 10 years, the Blues Hall of Famer, and Lightning would be around the house quite often. We were a scandal in the neighborhood because we had black people come into our house after dark, and they weren't maids. This is sort of one of his main songs, and it's a true story. With my diamond blade right in my hand, gonna hew down the oaks from out of this land. Well, if I had a listened to my Rosie Red, I'd be in my Rosie's bed. But I didn't listen, got to running around. And the next thing you know, I'm jailhouse bound. Now I got in jail with my mouth poked out. I'm in a pen and I can't get out. I'm Long John, I'm long gone. I'm gone, Long John, I'm long gone, I'm gone, John. Now, John Green was, in fact, a real person. He was in a county jail outside of Corpus Christi somewhere. And he was, the sheriff came up one day and he said, well, John, I hear tell you're a fast runner. Is that true? And John says, well, yes, sir, boss, that's what they say. The sheriff said, well, listen up, John, I got me a new set of hound dogs. You know, the old ones were just getting too old to cut the mustard, so I got me a new batch. And man, these are #1 blue chip hound dogs. But I got to try them, you know, we got to give them a workout, and so we'll give you a head start. If you get away, then you're a free man. But these are top-notch dogs. They'll have you back here in 30 minutes. What do you say? Sure, boss, bring them on. Well, listen here, honey, and I open that door. I hear the hounds are coming, and I got to go. Well, goodbye, Captain, and my sergeant, too. I'll be crossing that Brazos in the early dew. I'm Long John, I'm long gone, like a turkey through the corn with my long clothes on. I'm Long John, I'm long gone. Well, John, he made a pair of shoes, the funniest shoes that you ever was a seen. Had a heel in front and a heel behind, and you couldn't tell where that boy was a-gwine. Well, I riz up when they opened that door. Next thing you know, I'm in Baltimore. I'm Long John, I'm long gone, like a turkey through the corn with my long clothes on. I'm Long John, I'm gone, John, I'm gone, gone, I'm gone. I guess he's going yet. I do have to plug our merch, which consists of this album my dad made in 1965 for a live radio show in Houston. It was also recorded on a reel-to-reel tape recorder. The tapes later were willed to Rice University. Rice took them and had them baked, digitized, turned into WAV files, and now have them in their archives. And there are many, many, many other folk singers that were recorded by this gentleman, Peter Gardner, in about a one-year period in Houston, and that list would include early Guy Clark and Towns. It would include a lot of Jerry Jeff Walker and some of the other Houston folk singers that were just getting started. So that one's out there for $20, and this is my grandfather's autobiography. This version came out in 2017. It was originally published in 1947. It had been out of print for years before the Library of Congress, before the University of Texas Press reissued it. They put an index in it. They've added pictures, and there's a new introduction that my late son, myself, and my cousin, Dr. Anna Lomax Wood, wrote. And it's his life story in about 250 pages, and it's an interesting reading, to say the least. And so we're about to run out of time here, but I want to do maybe two more. This one, my father would always introduce this song this way. There's three kinds of lies in this world. There's plain old lies, I guess you call them white lies, whatever. Then there's bald-faced lies. And then there's whoppers. And this song tops the whopper list in American folk music. I was born 10,000 years ago, and there's nothing in this world that I don't know. I saw Peter, Paul, and Moses playing Ring Around the Roses, and I'll whip the guy that says it isn't so. It's a lie, it's a lie. Ship ahoy, ship a-hey, ship a-hi, hi, hi. Oh, I've sailed the seven seas in my dirty dungarees, but I never, ever, ever saw a mermaid. I taught Samson how to use his mighty hands, first showed Columbus these happy lands, and for the Pharaoh's many kids, I built the pyramids, and to Sahara carried all its sands. I taught Solomon how to use his ABCs. I was the first man to eat Limburger cheese. And while sailing in the bay with Methuselah one day, I saw his whiskers flapping in the breeze. I was with Jonah when he embarked within the whale. I never thought he'd live to tell the tale. But Jonah eating garlic, he gave the whale the colic. He spit him up and let him out of jail. Now the next verse is about Queen Elizabeth. So I'm not going to sing that verse out of respect. I didn't like it anyway, but I've written my own verse here again, and you all are going to be among the first to hear it. And it goes about like this. I was married to Madonna secretly, but man, that gal was way too much for me. So I went 10,000 miles down under, found some heavy metal thunder, and brought back the band AC/DC. Highway to hell, highway to hell. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap. It's a lie, it's a lie. Ship ahoy, ship a-hey, ship a-hi, hi, hi. Oh, I've sailed the seven seas in my dirty dungarees, but I never, ever, ever saw a mermaid. Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you. Believe it or not, Elvis recorded that in 1970. It came out 3 years ago. It sat in the can 53 years, but it came back out. He claimed he wrote it, which of course he didn't. And the only verse that he sings that I sang was the one about Peter, Paul, and Moses. We got time for a couple more. I promised you, before we get to our Lead Belly, we're going to come back to him, but this song, if anyone knows who wrote it, I'd love to know. I've been searching and searching. You can find tons and tons of versions on the internet of different people on YouTube and whatnot. I found out later that one verse was written by Ogden Nash, but the other verses weren't, and no one has been able to tell me who wrote it. I first heard my dad sing it in the early 50s, but it's a fun song. Caviar comes from the virgin sturgeon. Virgin sturgeon's a mighty fine fish. Virgin sturgeon need no urging. That's why caviar is my dish. Shad roe comes from the heart of shadfish. Shadfish have a sorry fate. Pregnant shadfish is a sad fish, got that way without a mate. Oysters, they are fleshy bivalves, live their lives within their shell. How they diddle is a riddle, but they do so, what the hell. Mrs. Clam is optimistic, shoots her eggs into the sea. Hopes her suitor is a shooter, hits the self-same spot as she. Give a thought unto the codfish, always there when duty calls. Female codfish is an odd fish, from her come those codfish balls. The turtle lives between, the turtle lives twixt plated decks, which totally conceal its sex. I think it's clever of the turtle in such a fix to be so fertile. I gave caviar to my granddad, he's a gent of 93. We heard screaming from the backyard, he'd chased grandma up a tree. I fed caviar to my girlfriend, she's a virgin tried and true. Now that virgin needs no urging, there ain't nothing she won't do. Caviar comes from the virgin sturgeon. Thank all of you again for coming. We promised you another Lead Belly. This is the one that you probably would know. It was the #1 song in the United States in 1950 for 13 weeks, 3 months. This is according to Billboard magazine, of course. It was the #1 song longer than Patti Page's version of the Tennessee Waltz, and also the Nat King Cole's Mona Lisa. Last Saturday night I got married. Me and my wife settled down. Now me and my wife done parted. Gonna take me a stroll downtown. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene, good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Stop your rambling, stop your gambling, stop staying out late at night. Go home to your wife and family and sit by your fireside bright. I asked your mother for you. She told me you were too young. Now wish to the Lord I'd never seen your face, that you ever was born. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Sometimes I live in the country. Sometimes I live in town. Sometimes I take a great notion to jump in the river and drown. I love Irene, God knows I do. Love her till the seas run dry. But if Irene turns her back on me, I'll take morphine and die. Irene, goodbye. Irene, goodbye. Goodbye, Irene, goodbye, Irene. I'll get you in my dreams. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate your spending time with